historic excursion. Perhaps one of the most important things for women was what? Suffrage, that they got the vote, which happened in 1920. And the Blaze wrote an amazing analysis of how women in America got the vote. Now let me get this right, because it involves specific states, political parties, and votes. After World War I, 91% of Republicans in the House voted for women to get the vote, as opposed to 59% of Democrats. On June 4th, 1919, the bill passed the Senate, 56 to 25. Was it 56 Democrats that wanted women to get the vote? Hold on. 82% of Republicans voted in favor of the amendment, while only 41% of Democrats decided we need to continue the war on women. By March of the next year, it had to go to the states. The states had to ratify the amendment to give women the vote in America, and they were one vote shy of ratification. Which were the states that were blocking it? Democrat-controlled states such as Alabama, Georgia, Louisiana, Maryland, Mississippi, South Carolina, and Virginia. Then it finally ended up in the tie-breaking final state. The critical background was Tennessee, where the legislature was deadlocked, 48 to 48. Should women get the vote? Finally, it passed because of one man, 23-year-old Republican State Representative Harry T. Byrne, who, by the way, was a Republican. So who's been waging the war on women? And is it just political? Of course it's not just political. It is also sexual, and it is violent. From Chappaquiddick, where Ted Kennedy caused the death of a young woman and then proceeded, as she was drowning, to leave the site of the crime, go to his hotel and get a good night's sleep. Or the Kennedys in general. Sorry, but Mary Jo Kopechne was also targeted by RFK. Yes, Robert Kennedy wanted to have his wicked way with her. But let's bring it more up to date. A Democrat president, Ted Kennedy, never made it to the presidency, neither did RFK. But Bill Clinton did. A man known for being a sexual predator. Not just Monica Lewinsky, here are the victims of his alleged rape assaults and sexual assaults. That's just 4 of them. We could spend the whole rest of the show reading the litany. And of course, the current incumbent in the White House, Joe Biden, has been targeted by a credible accusation from Tara Reid, former Senate staffer, who said that he did something to her that I can't mention on television right now in the tunnels under the Senate. That is another Democrat president. But it's not just presidents. It's members of the quote-unquote elite, movie moguls like Harvey Weinstein, huge Democrat donor, buddy of the Clintons. There he is. That's in the midst of the Me Too movement. But today, the war on women is actually against the concept of women, what it means to be a woman. Leah Thomas is a man, but the left says he isn't. And Leah Thomas is crushing the hopes of young female athletes with his transgender lies. What can we do about it? Let's talk to one brave lady who has been courageous and outspoken on this issue. I love her podcast, her video streams. You've got to follow her on YouTube. Her name is Sydney Watson. Sydney, welcome to the Gorka Reality Check.
Thanks for having me. I always love coming on and doing your show.
Good. Well, look, let's talk about what you have been providing on your YouTube channel, also your website, sydneywatson.com. This now seems out of control. It's not just Leah Thomas. It's not just what the Democrats are doing behind closed doors. We have the Air Force tweeting for Pride Month a picture of their recruits running under a flag as they are exercising. That flag isn't the flag of the United States. It is the transgender pride flag. Then we have the U.S. Navy release this propaganda video.
and I use he, him pronouns.
Hi, and I'm Kanchi, and I use she, her pronouns.
And we're here to talk about pronouns.
What is a pronoun? A pronoun is how we identify ourselves apart from our name, and it's also how people refer to us in conversations.
Using the right pronouns is a really simple way to affirm someone's identity. It is a signal of acceptance and respect.
If
That's
a
not
man
real.
can be a woman, I know. If a man can be a woman, if anybody can be a woman, then the word woman doesn't mean anything anymore, does it, Sydney?
No, you're 100% right. I think the reality is that people don't realize that when we take language that refers to biological female processes, which, mind you, and you know this, you're married, you have children, I believe. There's many of these things. So it's really frustrating to me as a woman to be told that why we're changing our language is to be more inclusive of people who are not biologically women. That just seems really odd to me. It is an erasure of us. Particularly, I feel so bad for mothers because motherhood is something that is so unique and so special, and yet it's being rendered something that I suppose can apply, like I said, to anybody. And we're just erasing that really special element of humanity that, women can bear young, basically.
But isn't it even deeper than that? They say that this is about political correctness. It's about respect for somebody's chosen pronouns, as if you can change your chromosomal DNA with just volition. But when they say that, Leah Thomas, a man who's not had any kind of operation, can walk around a female locker room naked, what happens to, where are the real feminists who want to protect women?
Well, the problem is that you have now a greater division in feminism where radical feminists are the ones going, wait a minute, we are actually undermining our own sex and our own values and our own movement with all of this transgender nonsense. And then liberal feminism is that crazy section that's going, no, everyone's included, it's fine, let's just have biological males in female spaces, let's have biological males in female prisons that are targeting women, it's fine. So it is really strange to me to observe the feminist movement, which has historically obviously fought for, women's rights, even if some of those rights, and I think this personally, have been to the detriment of women. I think some of it's not been helpful. This is crazy because what they're doing is facilitating not only the erasure of women, but also they're putting women in harm's way in a lot of cases by taking these extraordinary measures to undermine our own safety in our own spaces.
Sydney, I really want to commend you for what you do every single day. You're outspoken, you're a fighter, you reveal the insanity of the transgender radical extremists. Just tell our viewers across the nation, why does Sydney Watson do what she does?
Well, that's a great question. The reason is because I don't want my children, because I hope to have children someday, growing up in this kind of a world where they're being exposed to things that are developmentally inappropriate, where they're being told that not only is being a woman something that doesn't mean anything, but anybody can do it, to take away unique processes and unique things, traits that are associated with their particular sex. So I do this basically not only for the future of my family, but also for, people today who feel as though society has gone off the rails, who feel as though all of this is being taken to the nth degree. And really, it's kind of funny because, for anybody who doesn't know, I started off in the men's rights space, which I still care about tremendously. What I am noticing is that, like I said, we put women in danger. We don't care about female safety, and that has to stop. I will not participate in all this cognitive dissonance. I will not do it.
Continue doing what you do. Follow this lady on YouTube, on Twitter, and at her website, sydneywatson.com. God bless. Let's talk about the science. They say conservatives are science deniers. Can you, in fact, change your sex? Can you change your biology? A generation ago, a word like transgender applied to cross-dressing men, usually. It applied to very funny Monty Python skits, to vaudeville, or the British tradition of pantomime. That's all changed. Today, we have Supreme Court justices who can't define what a woman is. We have one political party and even some medical professionals telling us that men can have babies. If you deny that, you are called a science denier. Recently, Matt Walsh released an amazing film called What is a Woman? And in it, he interviews a medical professional on this issue. And listen to her response.
Make you male.
Then what does?
It's a constellation.
In reality, in truth, okay?
Whose truth are we talking about?
The same truth that says we're sitting in this room right now, you and I.
No, you're not listening.
If I see a chicken laying eggs and I say that's a female chicken laying eggs, did I assign female, or am I just observing a physical reality that's happening in the world?
Does a chicken have gender identity? Does a chicken cry?
Well,
Does a chicken commit suicide? Let's
What does that have to do
frame it, because you're trying to...
Chicken has sex like any
A chicken
biological
has
organism.
an assigned gender, but a chicken doesn't have a gender identity.
So-
Does a chicken cry? Does a chicken have gender identity? That allegedly is a doctor. Let's talk to another MD, a star of that movie, Dr. Miriam Grossman. Welcome to the Gorka Reality Check.
Hi, Dr. Gorka.
Dr. Grossman, you are the author of a superb book, Unprotected. A campus psychiatrist reveals how political correctness endangers all our students. I'm just a PhD. I'm not a medical professional. I don't necessarily fall for arguments from authority. But let's start by saying, what are your medical credentials, briefly?
Well, I'm board certified in child, adolescent, and adult psychiatry.
Okay, so let me ask you the layman's question. Here is an image that I pulled down from a research institute associated with MIT that states explicitly that a man, the male of the human species, is an XY chromosomal makeup, and a woman is an XX chromosomal makeup. Let me ask you the obvious question, Dr. Grossman. Is that changeable? Can you alter your genetic makeup by drugs or surgery?
Well, obviously you know the answer to that. We cannot change our sex. There's no such thing as being born in the wrong body. There's no science behind that at all. Unfortunately, an entire generation and their families are being led to believe that that is possible. And indeed, they're being led to believe that may be the solution to many emotional problems that the child is having. This is a very dangerous ideology. It's not based in science. It's putting vulnerable children on a path toward infertility, serious medical problems, serious mental problems. And you know what, Dr. Gorka? We don't even have high quality long-term evidence that these interventions are going to help those people. And so we're really...
Let me just interject. The clip we played later on in the movie, that doctor says that the interventions, the use of puberty blockers, Lupron and other drugs, which, by the way, Lupron is used to chemically castrate sex offenders in prison. The doctor says that these procedures simply pause puberty, like pressing pause on a CD player, and then 2 years later, 10 years later, you can press the play button and puberty starts again. Are these procedures so easily reversible, Dr. Grossman?
Puberty blockers used on kids with gender dysphoria are experimental. We have only just started to do this about 10 years ago. And at that time, it was being done on a very specific set of children. It's being used now in a general way with all kinds of kids that are suddenly appearing out of the woodwork in this psychic epidemic that we're now in the midst of. So to answer your question,
Dr. Grossman.
first First of
Yes.
all, we know that there are side effects from these puberty blockers, such as on bone density. We don't know what the effect may be on the developing brain. We don't know what the effect is of chemically interrupting a normal biological process that the body is supposed to go through. A massive puberty is a massive change in the body that is supposed to happen at a particular time of life. And it affects the whole body, including the brain, the emotions, cognitive abilities, and so on. This is an experiment. We don't know what's going to happen to the kids that go onto these blockers, and then the vast majority of them, almost all of them, Dr. Gorka, continue to take opposite sex hormones, and they go into a chemically induced puberty of the opposite sex. This is an experiment.
It is an experiment. It is a shocking experiment. It has shades of what was happening with children during World War II in labor and death camps. I find it one of the most obnoxious, perverse things happening today. Educate yourselves, friends. We have to stop the mutilation and the abuse of children. The book is Unprotected. Please follow this lady on Twitter, and her website is miriamgrossmanmd.com. That's miriamgrossmanmd.com. Thank you, Dr. Grossman, for your courage.
I'm sorry. Thank you so much. I just have to, I'm sorry, I have to correct you. That is one of the books that I wrote. But the book that includes the gender aspect is called You're Teaching My Child What? Unprotected is about different issues. So the book that we want to be talking about here is, okay.
All right. You're teaching my children what? And Unprotected. Check them both out, and the website miriamgrossmanmd.com. Next, how are they selling these transitions? They're telling us that you must do this for the child, otherwise they'll commit suicide. Is that in fact the case? Big lie. Originally it applied to the Third Reich in the propaganda of the Nazi regime. The Democrats are trying to apply it to anybody who dares to question the results of the last election or to raise questions of election integrity. That's the new big lie. Well, you need to see 2,000 Mules and decide for yourself, my buddy Dinesh D'Souza's new movie. I want to talk about a different big lie, the transgender big lie. One of the ways they've been selling these mutilations of children, these castrations of children, sterilizations, is to say to the parents, you know, if you don't give in to your children's desire to change sex, they're going to commit suicide. Well, is that true? Even Time magazine, vaunted left-wing magazine, said that there are shockingly high figures of suicidal ideation amongst the LGBTQ community. But now, a new study from the Heritage Foundation provides the data on what is going on with these transitioning children. We have the author with us, senior fellow at the Heritage Foundation, Jay Green. Welcome to the Gorka Reality Check.
Thanks for having me on the show.
Jay, you did a kind of politically agnostic study of various states where these laws apply. Some are run by Democrats, some are run by Republicans. And you found some very interesting data when it comes to suicide or suicidal ideation. Will you share that with our viewers?
Sure. We took advantage of a natural policy experiment. Some states have laws that allow minors to access health care without parental consent, and other states don't. And what we did is we compared youth suicide rates between those two different kinds of states, and then we looked at it when puberty blockers and cross-sex hormones were introduced in the U.S. around 2010. And what you see is that before 2010, there's no difference between states in their suicide rates based on the ability of minors to access health care. But after 2010, the states where it would be easier for minors to access these puberty blockers and cross-sex hormones, we see a spike up in suicide. So rather than being protective against suicide, it appears more likely that these drugs are exacerbating suicide problems.
So it's the opposite of what they are telling us. It doesn't stop suicidal ideation, it actually seems to increase it. Now, we love the Heritage Foundation. Usually it's short, policy-oriented memoranda, couple of graphics, couple of pages. Your study is dozens of pages long, lots of reference notes. I found shocking the fact that, well, confirm for me, if you will, that there is a dearth of any long-term studies on what these transitions actually do to children, or what giving, you know, the Lupron chemical castration drug to a child does. Am I reading your observations correctly, Jay?
Yeah, as it turns out, there are only 3 studies that support the claim that the Biden administration and advocates are making that these drugs have to be widely and readily available or kids will kill themselves. And those 3 studies have been very poorly done. All they do is compare people who say that they saw it and got the drugs to people who say they saw it and didn't get the drugs. But what they failed to do is to control for the initial psychological health of the people who sought the drugs. Because one of the reasons people might be denied access to the drugs is if they were not sufficiently psychologically stable. And so really they're just comparing people who start out with more severe psychological distress and then report that those people think about suicide more, which, now look, this is a population that has a lot of issues, a lot of challenges, and a lot of them related to depression and anxiety. So suicide rates are elevated in this population. The question is, do these drugs help address the problem? And I think what they do is they offer a false cure. And by failing to address the real problem, we are actually allowing people to go untreated, and that the untreated psychological problems they have are causing an elevation in suicide rates.
Well, I want to commend you for doing this groundbreaking work. One quick question. Are you going to continue to cover this topic, Jay?
We are. I mean, the Heritage Foundation is committed to this issue. We think it's really important. And this will be the first of many things that we do on this. And as you say, this is an unusual kind of study for Heritage because it's more like an academic study. And look, I've been a distinguished professor at a university for decades before joining Heritage. So I hope you don't take that against me. But you know, I'm doing, I think, academic quality work here that shows that the Biden administration's claims are just false.
As a former professor and associate dean, I will not hold that against you. God bless you, Jay Green. Follow him, JP Green, on Twitter. You can read the analysis at heritage.org. Check it out and join today. That's Heritage, the Heritage Foundation, heritage.org. Where does this insanity come from? What are the origins of the transgender radicalism? We're going to talk to the expert, Marius Scott Wiener, has responded to the calls for sanity by saying drag queen story hours should be mandatory in California schools. Where did all of this insanity begin? Let's talk to the man who knows it all. He is the author of a seminal work called Cynical Theories, and now his new book is Race Marxism. Professor James Lindsay, welcome to the Gawker Reality Check.
Hey Seb, good to see you.
So your book that you co-authored, Cynical Theories, is the answer to where all of the critical theories come from, such as critical race theory. But the section that captured me the most because of its nihilism and its utter moral relativism was the section on queer theory. Will you just in a nutshell explain what the objective of queer theory is when it comes to concepts such as, oh, I don't know, truth and objectivity?
Yeah, it's to destroy those. The objective of queer theory is, in fact, to destroy the idea of the normal. It is actually a Marxist theory of normality. So Marx had this idea that, you know, some people have private property called capital, and they can use that, and they exclude other people from it. And queer theory builds the exact same idea that some people are considered normal by the constructions of society, and they get to exclude other people as abnormal and treat them badly, etc., and keep them out of the benefits of society. It's the exact same program. So its goal, when Karl Marx says that communism can be summarized in a single sentence, the abolition of private property, queer theory can be summarized in a single sentence: the abolition of any concept of normalcy, which would include truth, which would include objectivity, which would include, in fact, basic reality.
And this isn't the function or the result of, an outlier professor here, a radical theorist there. You can show this, and your book does show this, that this is a progression. We can put their faces up on the screen of the Frankfurt School, from Gramsci to Adorno to Marcuse. This was a collective group effort to undermine concepts of truth and objectivity, correct? This isn't just, one crazy guy here, one crazy guy there. This is a concerted theoretical push.
Right. So the key character that you just have on the screen in this regard would be Herbert Marcuse, who in 1955 wrote a book called Eros and Civilization, which basically says that if you want to actually liberate or set free a society, then you need to liberate it sexually. So the sexual liberation within the vein of radical feminism really picked up and took off under Marcuse's direction in the late 1950s through the 1960s. A character that's not on the screen that's relevant to this is the infamous Michel Foucault, the postmodern philosopher, who did a book called The History of Sexuality, which basically is, in a sense, the kind of grandfather book or grandmother book, I don't know which one we have to use for this, for queer theory. And the post-structuralist feminists picked that up in the 80s and created this queer theory. And this has been a massive movement in education, a massive movement in academia ever since. I mean, the first paper was 1984. It's called Thinking Sex by Gail Rubin. I read the entire thing as a series of podcasts on my website, New Discourses. People can go listen and hear the origin story of queer theory.
All right, everybody, you need to read these books. I think a mark of how successful James and his colleagues have been is that 2 years ago, 3 years ago, nobody in America, at least in the mainstream, had any idea what critical race theory is, or critical theory in general. Now, if you look at the latest data, more than 70% of Americans reject critical race theory, and it is in large part thanks to individuals like you and your work, James. So thank you so much for exposing the next-gen Marxists. The original book is Cynical Theories. His new book is Race Marxism, but you need to follow this man at his website, newdiscourses.com, and listen to his superb analyses, including his podcast. That's newdiscourses.com. God bless you, James.
SATs being abandoned for university entrance. Boston Latin, which has used to select people on the basis of examinations, is ceasing to do so and is now accepting people on the basis of lotteries. The same with Lowell High School in San Francisco. You've got these books like Michael Sandel and Markovitz's book attacking the principle of meritocracy, at the same time that you've got this sort of rather plutocratic Ivy League system. So you're getting the ladder, and then you've got the attacks on the elite schools in New York. So you've got the ladder being pulled down on the one hand, and you've got a sort of woke plutocratic elites on the one hand enjoying the fruits of all this educational, these vast dowries that the education system has, but on the other hand, not really being willing to reach out, which is what a meritocracy should be about, to the most talented groups in the whole of society. I think that means, ultimately, that America loses and China wins, which is not something I want to see.